The class was a B minus and you got a B plus, that's great. But he's like, A was possible. It wasn't like you couldn't get 100 on this test or exam. And it was like, oh God, here we go. Every time you came home with a grade and he would praise you. My mom would praise you. You get blessed with things, but it's like you could do better if you wanted to. And that was the thing. It was always like you could do better if you wanted to. And it was like, why do I not want? Why do I want to settle?
What does wealth mean to you, whether it's financial or the non-monetary things that kind of holistically define what's wealthy for you?
It's funny you said that, because when you first mentioned the topic of the journey of what we're recording here, and you mentioned these big names, and I'm like, I'm not nowhere near, where some of them are, financially. But when I look at my family, what we're doing, I'm like, we're wealthy for that reason. I was saying that this morning, my daughter was sick and I was able to hold her. It was like 7:30 in the morning. I held her for about 10, 15 minutes. And I was like, that's what I was grateful for. And he's like, do you know, if you had to go into an office for someone else, you wouldn't be able to do that. I try to spend as much time as possible with my wife, my daughter. And I know you see those entrepreneurs who are like always traveling, always grinding, but it's like, we're doing all this work. We're making all this money. Isn't the goal to do this for our family?
All right, family, laughing our way in. Welcome to another episode of the Wealth Blueprint series, where we have conversations from the intersection of family and finance. I'm one of your hosts, D. Johns.
Phillip Washington Jr.
So today we got an amazing show, got an amazing guest, because that's all we do. Today is nothing different. We got the good brother, Anthony Hartzog. Welcome to the show. How are you, my brother?
I'm good. Thank you, fellas, for inviting me here, and I'm excited for the conversation.
Yeah, man. Thank you for making that trek. I didn't realize it was going to be an hour.
I didn't know until my wife was like, you might want to Google map it first. It was worth it, man. Got a lot of work done.
Made that trip, but thank you nonetheless. For people that don't know you, some folks have been under a rock in our audience, so they don't know exactly who you are. How do you present yourself to others?
Well, number one, I'm a father. My name is Anthony Hartzog. I am a father. I am a husband. I own a couple of businesses. One of those businesses being a cleaning business down here in Texas. I also owned a virtual assistant business that we recently moved over into our personal brand business. And then me and my wife, we have a podcast that's around personal finance, relationship, marriage, life. And that's me kind of in a nutshell.
Dope. So the obvious thing for me is your accent isn't from here. Where's home? Let's talk about your origin story, how you were brought up, where you from, and all that.
Yeah. So I've been in Dallas, Texas for 7 years now. Born and raised Brooklyn, New York. Canarsie from the projects. Born in Bed-Stuy actually in the 90s, early 2000s, drugs, things like that. My family lost our brownstone at a very early age, so that forced me to move from Bed-Stuy to Canarsie, where I spent a lot of my adult life. Went to University of Albany, which is upstate New York, graduated with a bachelor's in information science and minored in computer science and something else that I don't use today. And after I graduated from college, I got a job in information technology. I worked in IT as a director for hedge funds, private equities. I was doing that I was at that company for 10 years, was in IT for a total of 15 years. And then been a full-time entrepreneur now for 3 years, been in entrepreneurship for 7 years now.
Dope. So you're a father and a husband. Did you make the shift to entrepreneurship after you became a husband or before? How did that work out?
Good question. So me and my wife, we got married in 2000. When did we get married?
I can edit.
You're good. You put me in the spot there. So we got engaged. This is when it actually started. We got engaged in 2012. Okay. And one of the things we did was we wanted to come out of a wedding debt free. So that was the first time we really put our finances together. And I said, in order for us to come out this wedding debt free, we need to start saving. We need to start investing. So during that time, we had a joint checking account at Chase. And we were
before you got married.
Before we got married.
Ooh.
This is in 2012.
That bro going deep.
Yeah. This has really got me into the mode I'm in today. 2012, we had a joint checking account at Chase, and we started putting like $500 a month into that account. Then during that time, I had a job, and I was like, I need to put more money into this account. So I picked up another job. This wasn't Uber, but I was doing like grocery deliveries. I started reselling sneakers during that time. I'm a huge sneaker buff, buying sneakers, reselling them, and that got me into like the entrepreneurship bug. So when we did get married, that's when I said, okay, we had $114,000 of debt. And I said, in order for us to pay off this debt, that was my goal. I was like, all right, we got to pay off this debt. We got married. We put our finances together because I feel like that's what husband and wife should do. So we put our debt together and I realized we had $114,000 of debt. And I said, I want to pay this off as soon as possible. And in order to do that, I said, we have to build a business. We have to pick up more jobs. We have to create more income for ourselves. So that's really when the entrepreneurship bug, really hit for both of us. So it was before we got married, but it really took off when we got married. So about 7 years ago.
Was that always how you saw life? Because I mean, that's like you kind of called me to the carpet now because we didn't really have enough conversations about a lot of things, but specifically about finance. We both knew what we made, and when we got married, we put our accounts together, but we never really talked about debt and what a strategy was for that. Was that something that you learned at an early age, or did it kind of hit you as an adult? When did that light switch click for you?
I would say at an early age, I didn't really know much about finances. I mean, my father and my mother, I knew that they worked. I knew they got paid, and I knew I got an allowance. And I got an allowance when I did good at school, and I always did good at school. So money wasn't a problem for me in terms of necessities, right? I didn't come from I know, projects, you think about drugs, you think about violence, but my family gave me everything that they could. So I never really said, we don't have anything. I always had I didn't always have the latest Jordans, but she's like, my mom and dad was like, if you work hard, you get it. So that's when my mindset around money came. I was like, you work hard, you get more money. My first job was packing bags at a grocery store. And I was 12, 13 years old. And I knew, okay, I go to this place, they give me money for showing up. And that was like my mindset. In order to get more money, I work more. So that's when my financial background really came from an early age. It's like, all right, we got to grind in order to get to this goal. And during that time, my goal was debt freedom. And my wife Janoka, she's like, nah, we're good. Nobody's paying off their debt. No one's talking about this stuff. Why do you want to do it? But I just knew that we didn't have to be like everyone else. I don't know what triggered it, but it was like, we don't have to be like everyone else. And I think during that time, I got into podcasts and I got into Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
And he was and once I heard a story of a Black woman who was able to pay off her debt. She had a Mercedes and I think the story was like she had bullet holes in the car and Dave was like, you can't sell this car. And she was like, I'm going to try. And she ended up not selling it for, retail value. It had bullet holes and stuff like that. But she was able to take that car, sell it, and eventually pay off her debt. And I was like, if she could do it, she's from the projects. We're married and we got all this income. Why can't we do it? And that's when I was like, we started hitting our goals a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah. What you mentioned early podcasts, like what outside of Dave Ramsey, what were some other podcasts that you listened to early on? I'm curious.
Shoot, it was really hard 7-8 years ago to find Black people talking about money, finances back then. So a lot of it was 3 hours a day of Dave Ramsey. But I would say Rich and Regular was a big influence on me back then. I actually got to meet them. Those were probably one of the first people I heard, Black couples talking about money and finances and relationships. And I was like, there are pockets of people talking about this stuff. And that's when we started sharing our story on the HarTrimony page about us what we were going through. So that was probably one of the first ones. There was no Earn Your Leisure back then. There was really nothing like even this conversation here happening back then. So I would probably say those were like one of the first two podcasts I really started listening to.
You mentioned in your mind in conversations with your now wife that we don't have to be regular. Why do we accept average? Like, why do most of us accept? Like, what are your thoughts? I mean, because I would imagine. Well, I don't know. Maybe your circle is just like you, right? Or maybe you stand out. And for those that stand out, I'm always curious as to why we believe that it's not that we're so different, but like, what are some of your thoughts on why we accept average so readily?
For me, it was knowing that there was more out there to life. That I got that from my father was really good at math, and he was just like, he was like A's, like B's and C's. You could get away with that. He was like, but why not get A's? So every time I came home with a report card, it wasn't that he was necessary, he disproved of what I was doing. He was like, you could do better. Like, why not? And I'm like, well, my classmates got B's. The average was a B minus, and I got a B plus. He was like, okay, that's cool, but you could get an A. A is possible, right? He was like, don't get me wrong. He's like, if the average of the class was a B minus and you got a B plus, that's great. But he's like, A was possible. It wasn't like you couldn't get 100 on this test or exam. And it was like, oh God, here we go. Every time you came home with a grade, and he would praise you. My mom would praise you. You know, you get blessed with things, but it's like you could do better if you wanted to. And that was the thing. It was always like you could do better if you wanted to. And it was like, why do I not want? Why do I want to settle?
Right.
And I think my environment was a big proponent of that too. It was like I saw friends and family get arrested. I saw friends and family get shot, and at an early age, I had a cousin group. It was like 10 of us, either, pregnant, in jail, dead, we talking about before 20 at this age. So it was like, I knew I wasn't like them. I would go outside. We called ourselves baby-age kids, but I don't know if you guys remember the movie. There was this one kid who came from upper middle class, whatever, but he would never fit in. He was always the kid that was like, I'm not gonna do that. And I remember one day they had jumped on the roof of this building. It was like a 1-story apartment or something. They had climbed up on the roof, and the cops had came, and I was like, I don't think we should do that. I didn't go. So I didn't get in trouble. And I was always that kid that just was like, I don't have to do that. Could have been instincts or what, but I just always knew that I didn't have to follow the crowd. That was just me personally.
Yeah, man. I'm just a big believer in like the term like relativity, right? Like relativity it's like I think about myself now, right? Maybe relative to other people, I stand out, but relative to like
your expectations.
Jay-Z.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm not even in, you know what I'm saying? Like and then there's beyond Jay-Z, right? Because there's people who haven't been born as, you know what I mean? And so like I'm just a big believer in like borrowed faith and then learning to like create your own faith. You know what I'm saying? Like meaning like you, my father, I feel like I am beyond what my parents wanted, for their life at any given age.
Definitely.
And right. And then like on top of that, we're all living King's dream, right? And then you know what I'm saying? And so I'm like, there's just so many things that just push me that I can't explain, but I just try to, you know what I'm saying? Keep pushing and then pay that forward with other people. You know what I'm saying? Because so many people in our community, nobody believes in them. I know that's off topic, but I think the key is having other people who believed in me before I even knew what that meant.
That's the key. That is the key right there. Because even thinking back to my childhood, they was like, you're different. You don't have to do that. So there's somebody out there watching us, watching you, or when you were growing up, that always believed in you. It was like, you don't gotta do that. Like you don't gotta be like them. You you could do your own thing. And sometimes when you're young, like, nah, we want to do that stuff. That's what makes us fit in, right? That's what makes us feel good. That's what makes us feel comfortable. But when you start getting uncomfortable, people start recognizing, like, all right, you got something here. Like, you don't have to follow the norm. So that to me, that would be a key.
Yeah. Another key thing that you said, and how I interpret it, was borrowed faith. I've spoken about this before, where up until a certain point, I was still living off of my parents' faith, because my parents were not just religious, but I saw their relationship with God lived out, right? And I saw the fruits of it. I didn't necessarily walk in their path, to a T. And in those moments, I would rely on them until I had my family. Number one, is faith a part of your success, and where does it kind of fit in your journey?
Yeah, man. I've grown up in church, and I think when you grow up in church, you come to an age where you realize you may or may not want to follow that. You're like,
Same.
I think when you get to that age, that's when you really make a decision. Like, you have to go, right? You got to grow. You got to go with your parents, your grandmother. Like, I grew up in an environment. But I think until you become an adult and you're able to make your own decisions, that's when faith really comes into play. So I grew up in church, and I decided I'm at an age of 13, 14. Your parents give you the option not to go, so you don't go anymore.
Ooh, your parents gave you the option.
Yes. My parents gave me the option. Yes. We weren't as religious where I was forced to go. It's like, all right, I'm going to go every other Sunday. And that was pretty much the extent of the religious faith in my household. My father, he'd read the Bible to us once in a while, things like that. But until I became an adult and started making my own decisions, when I moved back down to Brooklyn in 2014, I think, my wife or her mom and her family always went to church. And I'm like, we're dating around this time. I'm like, all right, cool, I'm gonna start going with you to church. And I was like, I want to see what I've been missing all these years, see why you guys go. And I think that was what propelled me back into my religious faith, and going to church with her and her mom every Sunday. And then we moved down. We got married in the Catholic church, and they make you go through the classes and stuff like that. But it still wasn't real for me. I moved down to Dallas. We moved down to Dallas, and I was like, I want to experience. I experienced this with my family. I experienced this for your family, but I never experienced it on my own. So during that time, I was like, we're going to church every Sunday, but I'm still not. I'm doing it for you. When I started going to church on my own without her, and then I said I wanted to dive more into, we're Catholics because that's what, she did. That's what her family did. But I want to learn more about this faith. And then I started going to church on my own. And then I started going to the classes, and then I started going through the faith. And then I got baptized on my own. And that's when I said, okay, now I understand why we do it. And now, just even with our daughter, we go to church every Sunday, which is fantastic. But one thing we do every night is we pray together as a family. We eat together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I think that goes back to just my spirituality and believing in the family dynamic. So to answer your question, it really came down to me being an adult and deciding I want to do this on my own versus for someone else.
Yeah.
That's dope, man. And how much of that do you feel like played into, some of the prompts that you had about money and your success, right? Which I definitely want to get into because you have a pretty successful business. Like, how much did faith play in, a role in that,
That's
part of your life?
Good question. I would say most of it. When we were going through our debt freedom journey, when we were like, all right, we got $114,000 of debt that we want to pay off, we were still tithing during that time too. And most of the time it's like, well, you don't tithe, you take that money and you put it into your debt or investment savings. But that was off the top. It's like, yo, we still got to keep this going. So during that time I was going through my Catholic journey. We were still trying to pay off this debt and I was still tithing. And it made it a little bit more difficult, but I believe that it's going to come back. And it's funny, it always came back tenfold. You got the bonus, you got the windfalls, you got the it always came back, and it never felt like, oh, I'm giving my money away and I'm never going to see a return. Now, you don't do it to see a return,
right?
But you do know that it's going to come back to you in some way, shape, or form, whether it's monetary, whether it's family, whether it's faith or whatever. So it does play a huge part to this day. So we still tithe, we still donate to our churches. Even back in Brooklyn, we got married in Brooklyn, even though we were in Dallas for 7 years, we still donate to our church back in Brooklyn when they're doing something big or whether they're not, we're still giving back because that's just where we came from. And we know that played a huge part in our journey and we'll continue to do so.
You mentioned traditions that you didn't call it a tradition, but things that are important to you in terms of family, eating together, praying together. And you said we eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner together. I'm not saying that's a flex, but that is a luxury that most don't experience. And where I'm going with it is, when I think of wealth and what this series is about, it's not about a dollar amount per se. It's about a lifestyle. It's about you achieving the things and having what you want out of life and the ability to enjoy it. So I'm framing the question like, what does wealth mean to you, whether it's financial or the non-monetary things that kind of holistically define what's wealthy for you?
It's funny you said that because when you first mentioned the topic of the journey of what we're recording here, and you mentioned these big names, and I'm like, I'm not nowhere near, where some of them are, financially. But when I look at my family, what we're doing, I'm like, we're wealthy for that reason. And I had to be reminded of that literally this week. It was a horrible week. Not relative speaking, right? You have ups and downs in business, but it was a bad week, not horrible. Let me rephrase that. And I have these gratitude calls. One of my associates, one of my sales guys, he always starts the conversation like, "What are you grateful for?" Every conversation, good morning, blah blah blah. What are you grateful for? And I said, it's funny you asked that. I had to think about it, and I was saying that this morning my daughter was sick, and I was able to hold her. It was like 7:30 in the morning. I held her for about 10, 15 minutes. And he was like, I was like, that's what I was grateful for. And he's like, do you know if you had to go into an office for someone else, you wouldn't have been able to do that?
Be sick. Sick to your stomach.
He's like, your daughter's home, she's sick, you can't do anything about it. He's like, you were able to hold your daughter for 10, 15 minutes this morning without even having to rush anywhere. And that reframed back to your question, like, what does wealth mean to me? And that's one of those examples of, being wealthy, being able to spend time with the people I love when they truly need it. So to answer your question, that's exactly, one of the things that it means to me. And when I held it, I was like, this is the best feeling in the world. And it's not about the finances. It is about the finances, but it's it's more about what you're able to do with the people you love.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to stand up for 1 second. What becoming a father, how did that shift your mindset, if at all?
Some people say becoming a father makes them grind more. For me, it was like, it made me settle down a lot. I don't want to say I got lazy, but you realize there's so many more important things out there in this world, man. And to even go back a step, before fatherhood, I lost my best friend. We worked together for 9 years. I hired him in my job under me. He passed from sickle cell. And during the pandemic, there's nothing we could do about it. And I lost him. And it was like, just like that. During the pandemic, everybody's losing people. And this was my best friend for decades, best friend at my wedding. We lived roommates together. I brought him down to Dallas. I sent him over to London to manage that office. So we had such a close-knit relationship. And I was like, we hired his replacement at the job because I had to. I want to reframe this just in case this goes viral or anything like that. We because the position was vacant. So we eventually have to hire somebody.
Yeah.
And we did it the right way. We put put something in his honor, stuff like that. We eventually had to replace him. And that just reminded me, life is just too short, man. Yeah. So going back to the question about what did fatherhood do for me, it made me realize that a lot of other stuff is not that important. So I try to spend as much time as possible with my wife, my daughter. And I know you see those entrepreneurs who are like always traveling and always grinding, but it's like, we're doing all this work. We're making all this money. Isn't the goal to do this for our family? A lot of times that's all they want is a time, right? A lot of the times they just want to be there with you. So my wife reminds me of that all the time. It's like, Anthony, like, we don't have to go do that. We don't have to do this. And I'm just like, sitting down, just being present is just very important to me. And that's something I'm still learning through fatherhood.
Do you, and that's I'm glad you asked that first, because this clarified my question I was coming back with next is, do you feel like that mindset, that change of pace, if you will, has made you an even better entrepreneur, right? Meaning, because normally you would think, well, if you slow down, that means less money. But have you actually found that it might have meant more money?
Yeah, in different seasons. I think for me, it meant that I don't have to do as much. I probably shouldn't do as much. So, and to answer your question, maybe a better entrepreneur, because I recognize that I can't do everything myself, and I don't want to do everything myself. So right now we're going through seasons of finding people to replace some of the tasks that I'm doing. Finding people to help us. And that's one of the things we aren't shy about asking. It's like, we need help to do something. We're going to find a coach. We're going to find a mentor. We're going to find somebody to help us get to the goals. So it was just about being more intentional with my time and figuring out, who do I need to help me do whatever the goal is during that time.
Got it.
Man, that asking for help is a challenge for me just because that's kind of who I am. I mentioned it in another conversation, is like, when I get around genius, I don't necessarily initially ask how you did it. I'm like, watch me be genius too. You know what I'm saying? And then that's not even about comparison. Like, you don't even know we're in competition, but in my head, I kind of do that. Have you always been open and you and your wife are in business together, at least in one or two businesses, correct?
All of our businesses.
All of your businesses together. If you're at liberty to, can you talk about the dynamic of background and how that shaped how you do business? Did you come in with a thought that was this, and she came in with a thought that was this? Not that either are wrong, they're just different. How do you negotiate or manage that?
That's a really good one. So all the ideas I had, all of the businesses that we've started or things we've done has been from my head. But the dynamic that makes it perfect for us is that she'll come in and she'll add a layer of complexity to it that I didn't think about. She's like, well, Anthony, Tony, did you really think about that? I was like, nah, I saw it on Instagram. Or I want to add this, I want to hire this person. She's like, did you really think about it? And then it makes me sit down and ponder, all right, what do I need? What pieces do we need to put in place to make that happen? And a lot of times she's like, we probably shouldn't do that in this season of life. And like with the debt freedom was one where it was my idea to do, and I had to let her sit on it. It was like, this is what we're going to do as a family. Sometimes as a husband, I feel like we have to make the decision of the household. Like, this is what we're going to do. Yeah. But she came to the compromise on her own. When we moved to Dallas, I was like, this is what we're going to do as a family. I understand it's hard, but I have to plant the seed and let you come around to it.
Gotcha.
So even with business, sometimes I'll plant the seed and she'll come around to it, and she'll come with her own ideas to it. So everything we do is together, but that dynamic where she's always challenging me allows us to figure out, how we need to go about it. And then with her she's a mental health counselor. She's been a therapist for I don't know how long. That also plays a big part into our conversations, where she may not be analyzing what I'm saying, but she's analyzing what she needs to make sure we make the right decision as a family.
I want to tap into that, but first we're going to hear from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
If you want to hit a home run, you have to be invested in something that you fully believe in, and that even though it's relatively immature today, you see where it's going, you believe in it, you commit your capital, and you allow it time to mature. This episode is sponsored by the Wealth Building Made Simple podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other major podcasting platform.
And we're back. We were just talking about the pros. Well, we hadn't even really got to it. You were telling us about your wife being a counselor. Mm-hmm. My wife thinks she's a counselor.
Don't they all?
I control the edit, so I'll see how I feel about that in a couple weeks. But no, in all seriousness, what are pros and pros? I don't want to go with cons, but what are the pros of having that perspective in your home and in your business?
I would say the biggest pro is when you have a business partner or anyone in your business, a lot of times you can't trust people because they might have ulterior motives. They're going through their own stuff outside of what you guys are going through. I think one of the biggest pros for us is that we know what we're going through. We know that there's always a push for the family. It's not about me. It's not about her. It's a push for the family. So there is nobody in the background saying, oh, Anthony, you need more shine than her. We do all of our podcasts together. Right. We have our own podcasts that we do together. And then there are podcasts that she does on her own, and there are shows that I do on my own. And it's always the narrative to continue to share what we're doing, but then also pushing our people forward. Yep. So I think as long as we have that in the back of our minds, there's for me, I would rather have my wife as a business partner than anyone else in the world, because I'm more of a trusting individual. Like, you told me to come here. I'm like, I'm coming.
Your boy showed up.
I was like, I'm coming. She was like, do you know them? Do you know what their show's about? I'm like, yo, he asked for a favor. We're going to get this done. Like, I don't see any issue with it. She's like, well, what if I'm like, it's the narrative that I would want to be on. It's the narrative that our family needs to be on. So there was no conversations there from my side, but from her, you see the question she's asking. Yeah. So you were going to ask the cons. So that would be some of the challenges as well, where you have your wife involved with everything, right? Mm-hmm. So there was never really a turn off of what we're doing. Yeah. There's never really we're at dinner, we'll be quiet because it's something we think about business. So we should be sitting there, Anthony, don't say it. Like, don't do it. Like, today this is a family day, no business, nothing. So that would probably be the biggest challenge, knowing when to turn it off. Yeah. Especially for me, because for her, she'll turn it off. Last night we were watching. What the heck were we watching on TV? We were watching some show. We were watching a show called The Bear on Netflix or something like that, about this guy who opened up a restaurant. He's been an entrepreneur for a while. He opened a restaurant, and his brother, he came and took over his brother's restaurant. So I'm thinking about all the business things that we could talk about during the podcast and stuff like that. She's like, Anthony,
let's watch the show.
Let's watch the show. She's like, shut the hell up. Let's watch the show. Yeah. So, and even with Housewives, I do that a lot too. I'm like, there's a business part of this show that I like and enjoy. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I'm not watching it for that.
How do you because it sounds like both of y'all have really strong personalities that complement each other, and I'm asking this perspective for ladies and for men, because I feel like we had a guest before, and we talked about his daughter's going to grow up and be like your wife, strong-minded, strong will, ask questions that to a man that doesn't have as strong of a mind as you might take as a threat. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Which would cause issues. So, like, what do you do, or how do you think you develop to be able to, for lack of better words, handle the pressure from a strong-minded woman that may put pressure on what you don't understand, and you have to maintain patience. Yeah. Right. As you help her manage through that pressure.
Yeah, that's a good one. So my wife is very strong-minded, and you would have to know her mother, and you'd have to know her grandmother to understand how this dynamic works. And I've been involved in it. We grew up in the same building. So we grew up together, literally from 12 years old. I'm 37 now. So we've known each other since we were preteens. So to understand her, you have to understand her mother. And then when I've met her grandmother, I understand her mother. So it's very challenging when you have two people who are very strong-willed come together. But I think the beauty is that we've known each other for so long, we've seen each other develop into who we are today. So it's not like we came into a situation where it's like, oh, you're strong-minded, you're strong-willed, and I'm strong-willed. We're trying to figure this out together. It's like we grew into each other's lives together. So even when I came back from college, I was a slightly different person that she knew.
Right.
I went away to college and she kind of stayed near back in Long Island. I went upstate. So when I came back, I was around a lot more varieties of people, Black, white, Asian, different types of people. So when I came back, she's like, oh, he's a little bit different. He understands himself a little more. And she recognized that too. She's like, he's a lot more outspoken. Because when I left, I was probably, a lot more quiet, more reserved. So when I came back, she's like, okay, he's changed over these years. Now, how do we make this work? And I think through the years, I think we've been able to develop and grow together. So that's one of the extreme benefits for us. Now, for a man and a woman who are coming together and they don't know each other from a hole in the wall and they're trying to figure this out, I would say for me, I would love to have a woman. We was on our podcast, our coach's podcast the other day, and she's a very strong-willed person.
Donnie.
And I said, this is how her and my wife got together, and they've been able to click so quickly because I knew that Donnie would be good for my wife. And that's how I come into this relationship and how we make this work from a business standpoint. So when I see a woman who's very strong-willed, I find that attractive. I'm like, this is the type of woman you want your kids your daughter to model after. So for me, I find that to be a very attractive trait for a woman to have. For a man who's not comfortable with himself, you really can't fix it. You gotta fix that yourself, brother. But for me, I found that to be very attractive early on. Now I've dated women who allow me to. Let me make sure.
Yeah.
I've dated women who, where it wasn't a good fit, right?
Yeah,
and I was like, I understand, what we're doing here. But when my wife came back into my life, I said, okay, this is different than what I'm used to. I said, oh, okay, we have to figure this. We're figuring this out together. Okay, you can't do that like you used to do. Okay, check in here. So now I'm understanding, oh, this is different. I like this. So I think for me, that was one of the biggest turn-ons about our relationship and my attraction to her.
Sounds like you respect standards.
Yeah.
What role does standards play in your house and your business and kind of like structuring and framing out how you generate wealth?
Yeah. So, I think for us, with us being a husband-wife combo in business, sometimes it could be, you would think there's blurred lines here, but we're never in a position where we're arguing about, when we're debating things with our company or our teams, they know it's not a relationship. This is all business. And we keep it that way very, very intentionally. We don't ever allow our personal lives to, even if we just had an argument personally before we hop on a podcast together, you won't see that on the podcast. I don't want to do this and you didn't do that and dishes is not done. That's the type of stuff we argue about. And it's like, oh, here we go. Now we got to record a whole hour episode about a podcast about being in love and relationships. and it does bleed out, but we do it intentionally sometimes. But when it comes to business, we make sure we're very intentional about leaving home at home in business. We make sure we bring business to the table. So, like going back to the conversation around dinner, her standard is when we're at dinner and I don't want to talk about business, even if you want to talk about it, we're not going to talk about it.
Gotcha.
We talk about it all day. So we have very strict standards when it comes to our business and our personal lives, and we try to keep them separate, but obviously it's going to bleed over a lot. So that's how we maintain our standards in a relationship and then also in business.
Dope. You did you have something?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'm super interested, so you got to pull me back.
No, go ahead, man.
I want to get into your clean, and I don't even want to, forgive me how I frame it. Your cleaning business empire. I'll say that, right? Because I don't want to make sure I frame it the right way. But when the business, okay, let me put it this way: the business that I found you through, right, through the algorithm showing up as that, right? When you guys started that business, which number business was that for you? Because you said you own some things, and then I want to talk about why this one stuck, or did the other stick as well? Like, was this to me? My ignorance seems like this is the one that catapulted, and maybe that's not.
That's the way the algorithm makes it seem.
Okay,
but our cleaning business that we actually, so we own a actual cleaning business, and then we also teach people how to start their own cleaning businesses as well. So that's the educational side. But the educational side is probably what you see more about, because that's the sexy. That's what everyone sees. That's what everyone's talking about. But the actual business where, our teams are going out and cleaning homes, that was literally our first business. So yes, it was a business that stuck, but it was our first business, and we recognized that it had some potential. So it was something that didn't have anything to do with our brand, our face, our name. And most people don't even know we actually own a physical cleaning business, which is the way we want to keep it. So that's one of the reasons why it has stuck for us. It has nothing to do with our HarTrimony brand or the podcast. We don't got a TikTok. We don't have to do none of that. So that was our first business. And that's the one that seemed like it stuck, because that's the one that, people know us for. At first it was our debt freedom journey, but people started asking, how did you guys actually start building wealth outside of paying off your debt? And one of the parts of our story was that cleaning business. Now it's the main part of our story. But when we first started it 7 years ago, it was just a small part of our story.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that cleaning business, because I have a couple of friends who started it, but like what, and we're going to direct folks to your podcast to get the specific details, but like in that business, are you doing homes, commercial, Airbnbs, like, who are some of the clients y'all work with in the cleaning business?
Yeah, so when we started, it was just us trying to figure out everything. It was like, yo, we don't know nothing about business. This is our first business. We don't know anything about business, and we were just trying to figure it out. So to answer your question, we've tried everything. We've stuck with residential the most, because we found that's the easiest to hire for, because it's certain qualifications that you need for commercial. Airbnbs, we tried it, and we absolutely hated it, because most people who own Airbnbs and they have a cleaner, they're just looking for the cheapest service possible. And we're not the cheapest service possible. But then also Airbnb owners want you to actually manage their business. They want you to come in, they want you to take pictures, they want you to let them know when the Wi-Fi is out, and they want you to stock the supplies. And I was like, no, that's a property manager. Right. But you don't want to pay 2 fees. You just want to pay the cleaning fee. So we've tried everything, but we've mainly focused on residential, only because that was the easiest for us to keep going. And it was the one that we said we like dealing with those type of clients the most. So that was the only reason. It wasn't like a thing that we kind of like, oh, well, commercial pays more, or Airbnb. It was like, no, we just like this because of clientele. But then also we had 9 to 5 jobs. So with commercial, a lot of times you have to clean outside of hours. That means we would have to be available for phone calls or issues. With us having 9 to 5 jobs while running this cleaning business, it was like, well, we can still, it's during the day. We can answer the phone if necessary. We can text people if necessary. If there's an issue, we could hop off our jobs and go to the bathroom, answer it. So that's kind of the reason why we stuck with residential. But there was really no rhyme or reason when we first started. It was just us just trying to figure this out. And that was the thing that we said we liked the most.
So you mentioned the race to the bottom when it comes to the Airbnb. These were the cheapest. What is your, I guess, what is the stamp of your business? Like, what, if you're not the cheapest, good, fast, cheap, right? Pick 2. Like, what's kind of the principal thing that people get consistently when they deal with your business? What is your business known for?
So we started it in 2017. And the reason we started it then, again, around a debt freedom journey. But in order for us to find a business to come clean our home, we had to call them, we had to text them, we had to email them. They would get back to you. They had to come out and quote your spot. And I was like, there has to be a more efficient way to do this. But this is before where it is now. Everybody's doing it today. But in 2016, 2017, we implemented that you could find us online, you could book us online, you get an estimate online, you could pay us online. We don't even have to see you or talk to you. And we was like, if we could get these people to do this stuff, then our lawn care guy today still leaves invoices on our door. I got to Zelle him the money for. He has to text me, oh, I'm coming out tomorrow. And it's like, there got to be something more efficient. Right. And you realize a lot of local service businesses today are coming into times. So that was one of the things that we really stuck on early on. And a lot of our early reviews was, I found them online, I booked them, and they showed up when they said they was going to show up. It was convenient for people. Like, we have 9 to 5 jobs. We want to, a lot of people were showing up late. So we said, all right, if we give them an arrival window between 8 to 10 on Saturday, we'll arrive within that time. most people are going to be happy because they're used to it from their cable guy or, all these other services.
Yep.
But what was happening was, they would have to, oh, I'm running late, or I'm texting you late. So we was like, if we give them an arrival window, and if we could get there between that arrival window, we'll be good. They booked us online. They called us. They we got them. We're good now. So those are some of the things that we did early on to kind of beat the competition, if you will. But even 2023 today, there are still a lot of businesses, and people think, oh, the market is oversaturated. But if you go on Google, you look at some of these websites, some of these platforms, they don't have the ability to find you online. You can't book them. You can't pay them. They still got to come out. They still got to text you. They still got to, it's like so many things and nuances that people are still dealing with today that we were able to solve back in 2017. So those are some of the things that made us stand out early on.
Gotcha.
Yeah, man, when you were talking, two questions came to mind. If it hasn't happened, I'm pretty sure it will have. Yeah, have y'all started getting approached by money to just do that for other home services? Because it's a no-brainer for y'all to just do that for lawn care. I mean, it's you know what I'm saying? It's the same process of setting up the site and just going through each of the home services and digitaling it out.
So the challenge with them is that they don't really know from a perspective of what they need and what they don't need. So it would be a lot of us going out and finding them. So now we find cleaning businesses where they're like, I've been cleaning my whole life and I don't have a website, I don't have a booking platform. So now we do it for them because they're coming up to the times, but a lot of them don't even know. Like my lawn guy, he doesn't know that there's a better way to do this. He's like, he doesn't know how to figure it out. Right. Even just one of my instructors from another local service business, right? She's like, oh, after every lesson you Zelle me. I was like, we could just set up auto pay for this, right? They don't even know what they're missing because I'll forget to pay you. And now a week later, hey, Anthony, you didn't pay me. So they're still figuring this out on their own. So it would be a lot of us reaching out to them, but a lot of cleaning business owners are recognizing that they do need help. In entrepreneurship, a lot of times we're just trying to figure this out alone. We're not like, oh, I need help. But for us, it's like we're reaching out to everyone for help because we know there's a better way to do this stuff. But for them, it's like, I've been doing this for 15, 20 years. What do you know? I talk to cleaning business owners all the time, and it's like, I've been doing this longer than you've been born. I was like, I'm not saying that, I can't learn from you, but if you know there's a more efficient way to do something, why not just take the advice? And I was on the phone with this lady, and she, by the end of the call, she was like, Anthony, I know that there's a better way to do it, but I don't think I'll be able to get there, before my time is up. She was an older lady. She's like, I've been doing this 30 years. My back is going out. There's no succession plan for me at this point. And she's like, I know there's a better way, but I don't think I have the ability to do what you're willing to help me with. And I was like, you're probably right. And I had to recognize that. So a lot of them they may know they need help. They just don't know where to go, or they just too stubborn.
Yeah.
So I got some clarity in this conversation because which makes perfect sense now. The HarTrimony is what I followed. The pieces of the story is what I caught. So I don't think I think I was tying the HarTrimony kind of like as a monolith to this cleaning empire. But let's talk about what the HarTrimony is and like what that passion represents.
Yeah, so the HarTrimony is literally so the HarTrimony is our brand. It was funny because it was our hashtag for our wedding. And we was giving out to friends and family, what's a dope hashtag? Because everybody this was when Snapchat was coming around. It was like, all right, everybody's doing hashtags and locations now. It's like, oh, I'm older, but whatever. We couldn't think of anything. And I literally took HarTrimony from our last name is Hartzog, and HarTrimony from matrimony. So I said, the HarTrimony is our wedding hashtag. And it's funny because it was so dope. We started our Instagram page just from sharing our journey, just being in Dallas as newlyweds, going through this financial and our first year, trying to figure out life. And it's become this brand that we didn't even think about, 7 years ago, where now we're talking about financial literacy. Now we're sharing our businesses. They know our daughter. So the HarTrimony was literally just a hashtag for our wedding, but now it's literally pretty much our holding company's name, HarTrimony. And we didn't know that it would be that today. Yes. So the cleaning business was just one of the businesses from quote unquote the HarTrimony, which is me and my wife. And then we have our virtual assistant business, and then we have real estate, and we have other structures, but literally the HarTrimony was literally just a hashtag that we said, it sounds good on paper, and it looked good as a hashtag on Instagram back then.
Yeah, that's dope.
I want to start to kind of round out the conversation and refocusing on what wealth means. We talked about the time component, but as you're considering your family as you do moment by moment, day by day, from a longer term perspective, what does wealth mean to you and your family?
Yeah. So when going back to the question about, entrepreneurship and when we had our daughter, before we had our daughter, my wife's grandfather gave her $1,000, and he's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be here. This is a couple years ago, probably like 5 years ago. He said, I don't know if I'm gonna be here. He said, I don't know when you guys are planning on having kids, but he said, if I am here, I would like you guys to do something with this $1,000 for, our daughter that wasn't born yet.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, let's put it to debt. I was like, let's just throw it to debt. My wife was like, no, because you throw it to debt, it will have no symbolic meaning to it.
Yeah.
So we took that $1,000, and what we did was we opened up pretty much our daughter's savings account. And we said before our daughter was born, we said we will put money into this account every single month until she's born. And then when she's born, we're gonna invest it into a Roth IRA for her. Now, she's a component of our business. She's on the media and branding and all of that, like
Push the
other
12K
cool stuff.
tour.
Yeah, all that other cool stuff that people talk about on Instagram. But that was the first understanding of what this means beyond us. And we weren't thinking about it then. It was just him saying, hey, whenever you guys have a kid, he's like, you do this with whatever you want. But he's like, if you have a kid, do something with this money. He's still around to this day, and we got pictures. He just turned 90, literally. Both her grandparents are 90, just turned 90 this year. She's been able to take pictures with him, and we always tell him that story, like that $1,000 you gave us. Now going back to your original question, I don't want to get too far off topic, because this all to me is what this long-term wealth strategy is for us. But thinking beyond just us today, right? So having a foundation for our daughter, literally going back to our church, our tithing, that's in our daughter's name. So now we invest the tithes from our personal finances to our churches from our daughter's name. Having her on the businesses. She's on our trust. She's on our estate. Now we're at the point where we're recognizing that we haven't had pretty much an estate meeting with our family. So my wife's mom is on our estate planning, and also in our trust, and as well as her cousin. So now we're at the point where we need to sit down and start talking about these things. All right, we got a couple properties, we got a couple businesses. So it's becoming more serious to us, because you could pass away today and have nothing. So life insurance, we have a life insurance policy on her. We have life insurance on me, my wife as well. So having these conversations beyond us. Growing up, I talk to my mother now all the time, like, you don't have life insurance. What happens when you pass? It's gonna fall on me. I'm the oldest of 3 kids. I'm gonna have to come out my family's pocket to pay for God. My mother's still here. Right. She is healthy, God forbid, but I'm having a very intentional, serious conversation. You don't understand how this impacts me and my family at this point by you not having life insurance. Now, it's not about me taking the money. I don't care about the money, but I want you to be able to cover yourself, because now I got to grieve. My wife has to deal with my grief. And then now we got to come out our family's pocket to deal with the planning, because Black people, we don't talk about this shit. Like, excuse me, we don't talk about this stuff.
No.
And I get real passionate when we have these conversations, because I'm currently having this conversation with my family. My wife's mom, we had a conversation where what happens when you pass? Who has access to your life insurance? Who has access to your bank accounts? Who has access to everything that you have? Because her actual father gave her that conversation, but they've been too afraid. Our Black, families have been too afraid to discuss what happens when I die. One of the first things me and my wife did, we had Alani, what happens when we die? One of the first things we did. So going back to wealth and the wealth building topic, those are conversations we're having now to figure out what happens when we die. What does this look like? She's not gonna want to own a cleaning business. I know for a fact. I know for a fact she's not going to own a cleaning business, but she's going to want to partake in what the cleaning business has given us. So whether that's a sell, what does selling this business look like? It's not attached to our brand, not attached to our likeness. We want to sell it. We have an operations manager. We got a team in place. That's good to go. So those are things that we're currently having intentional conversations about. What does it look like after we're not here?
Yeah, and I don't want to rush that part of the conversation at all, because I am coming to the realization, as seeing my parents lose their mothers. I never met a grandfather, but seeing my dad lose his mom and then my mom lose her mom within the span of 2.5 years, it started to hit me that the expectation of me may be what the expectation of them was, right? And there wasn't a lot of financial education. So it was the generation, the living generation taking care of the passing generation, when it's supposed to be kind of reversed, at least in terms of giving a starting point. So how did you and your wife approach those conversations? Because, and I'm asking this selfishly because these are conversations we need to have that quite honestly, I've been embarrassed to have because I haven't structured my life the way that I see it in my head. Right. And I think I'm trying to chase this point where I got to figure it out. Now let's sit everybody down, but that's not how life works.
No.
So having these intentional conversations, what was it like for you and your wife to get on the same page? Was it fairly easy? Was it, and I'm not trying to dig into your business,
you're
but
good,
just
man.
perspective selfishly, but I think it also helped.
And the purpose of your question, very, I understand that, and it's going to be different for everyone, but I think we should be having these conversations a lot more. And for us, I would say it wasn't the easiest conversation to sit down and talk to my wife about her mother when my mother's not doing it, right? So but she sees me intentionally having the conversation with my mother because I can't have the conversation. Well, now we have the conversation with her mother, but it took me sitting in my seat saying, "Hey, mom, you have to have life insurance." Why? Because when you die, it's going to impact my family. Right. And not from a selfish way, but I have to deal, again, going back to the grief, I have to deal with that and then also have to deal with the finances of that. So it took me, like you mentioned, having your ducks in a row. It took me intentionally having those conversations before I could go to my wife and say, you need to have these conversations with your mother because it's going to happen. And in our communities, we feel like we are never going to die. We are never going to die. Yeah. Lord, RIP to my cousin's baby's father, but he was killed. And he had 2 kids and she's a single mom. And I was like, damn. And I asked my wife, I was like, you think they got life insurance? And she was like, Tony, they don't. And I was like, why? She's like, I said, why would you think that I would know that? She's like, we just know we don't talk about that stuff. Then the question always becomes, why don't we talk about it? So going back to your original question, it wasn't the easiest to have the conversation about death. And I don't think anyone wants to sit here and talk about death. But it does happen, right? People die every single day. The stats show it. Only thing guaranteed in life is taxes and dying. So we know that. So we know we're going to die one day. What does it look like after you die? And I was literally listening to a podcast and I forgot what the young lady's name was. And she said, if you had to watch a movie about how your death played out, what would that movie look like? Like she's like, vividly picture after you die, what would that movie look like? There has to be a funeral. There's going to be expenses. There's going to be grief. There's going to be mourning. What does that look like in terms of you're no longer here, you're just sitting and watching? Would you be happy with the movie? Would you be sad? Would you be upset? And literally after we listened to that podcast, and I told my wife, like, yo, we got to have this sit down family meeting because yes, we got our ducks in a row, but our family doesn't know that we have our ducks in a row. It's like, we got your name down, we having a conversation, but they don't physically know what needs to be done. So it's not an easy conversation, but it's a conversation that we need to have. And your perspective, you're not going to have it all together. My wife, my mom, I still don't know if she has life insurance or not. But I'm still having an ongoing conversation. Now I'm talking to my brothers about what happens if mom dies. What happens with her apartment? Who stays there? Who pays the rent? Like, do we all chip in and pay the rent so that somebody we can keep it in the family, or do we sell it? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. We know it's going to happen. Yeah. So I think we just have to be intentional. And especially in our community, we have to be forceful with the conversation. It has to keep happening. Because if you don't, we're just going to create the same cycles that we've been living through.
Yep.
Yeah, that's real.
Man, the time has been well spent. Ant, you said I can call you Ant, right?
Yeah, you're good, man.
Yeah,
we friends now. We good.
No, seriously, man, I appreciate your conversation. I appreciate your transparency. For people that are looking to find you, connect with you and your wife, how can they do so?
Yeah, so they can check us out at the HarTrimony. So TheHarTrimony on all platforms. You could Google us. And yeah, just connect with us there.
Cool. All that information will be available below, no matter how you're seeing this, whether it's a clip or the long form, it'll all be there. We appreciate your time and interest in this conversation. Any closing remarks?
No, man, I enjoyed the conversation. I felt like when we got in the last part, I was like, man, this can be like a whole episode because, wealth management and estate planning is you said it all.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yep. That'll do it. We appreciate you guys. God bless you. Peace.